And we are back on the build phase. I'm Mr. Ben, and today I'm going to be such a bummer. I'm sorry, but I think it's probably time we start talking about it. Before I do that, though, I want to talk about something that's not a bummer, and that is the people who support this show. So, a shout out to our Pro Mat Eclipse patrons and above Brad, Jason, Justin, Patrick, Peter, and Roland. Uh, Helps keep the lights on, take care of our server fees. Genuinely appreciated. And if you want to join the coolest clubhouse in Versus, patreon.com/thebuildphase. Or if you don't want to do that, you can still like and subscribe to our YouTube. Share this stuff on social media. You know what to do. Okay, now let's get a little bit depressed. So, as far as content releases in the last couple years, I have been borderline effusive with my praise of how Upper Deck has handled 2020, the majority of 2021. I was very forgiving. I think I said the way I phrased it many times on the show was I can't find it in myself to be upset about delays given the circumstances. However, we're not in 2021 anymore. We are right at the very edge of 2022. And whereas getting getting goods to market is no longer the problem. Now, I know there's lots of other problems, like goods are way more expensive. There's other issues, but the shortages that we were seeing across a variety of industries have kind of wound down. For generally speaking, getting goods to market is no longer the massive issue that it was throughout some number of months within 2021, 2022. And I get that even though Upper Deck prints their cards within the United States, so we don't have to worry about shipping them across the ocean. Things like cardstock, ink, components for the machinery that run the machines, like there were shortages across a lot of stuff that had to be shipped across. So I was very, very forgiving to the and almost defensive of Upper Deck and Super Awesome Games. Like, hey, these guys are doing a great job. They're doing what they can. Yes, we've had to eat some disappointing news, but there's a pandemic. Like, chill, you know? That being said, I guess let's talk about Crossover 4. So Crossover 4 was originally intended to come out in 2021. It is thus far the only Versus cards that we've seen or that we can have in our hands in 2022. Now, there's a couple reasons why I don't really count Crossover 4 as a release this year. I'm about to make the claim that we are brushing up onto the edge of a whole year without new Versus cards. And I can already hear people go, well, we got Crossover 4. So that's why I'm addressing Crossover 4 first. One, Crossover 4 is not a real expansion. Real being defined as the expected number of main characters and supporting characters. I think if you look at any of the issue style expansions and you compare them to any of the crossovers, the distinction I'm trying to make is very, very clear. Now, there is cool stuff in this box. I don't want to crap on Crossover 4. I actually like a lot of the stuff in this box. But when I've gone so long without Versus cards, this is not the kind of box that I want to see. Now, earlier this year, you may have heard me appear on the Apex podcast. And when I talked with those fellas, I said, oh, we're pushing up on a year without Versus cards. Well, I was incorrect in saying that at that time because I was thinking of Maximum Carnage and Spider-Verse having come out when they were scheduled to come out, which was like August, which did not happen. If I look at the release dates that are on the Reddit, which shout out to the folks who run the Versus 2PCG Reddit, it's a great resource. I'll link it in the show notes. If you look at, we have our Thunderbolts expansion, which came out in July of 2021, and then in October 27th, so almost in November. So around the time the Symbiote arc should have been wrapping up, the first part of the Symbiote arc released. Then Maximum Carnage and Spider-Verse both came out in November. And I know they don't really like to release boxes kind of on top of each other in this way, and I honestly look at Upper Deck doing it that way as a favor to the community. And not even the whole community, but the subset of the community that was trying to prepare for the Midwinter Regional, getting those cards out to give us a little over a month, almost 2 months to have them in our hands, test, and do all that stuff. It was really appreciated. That being said, we go from November of 2021 to when Crossover came out, which, man, I shouted out the Reddit for having all this good information. It says TBA, to be announced. So according to Reddit, Marvel Crossover 4 isn't even out yet. I think this came out in like June. So it was sometime late spring, early summer. I don't remember the exact release date for Crossover, but again, I don't count Crossover as a Versus release in 2022. I'm making the claim that we have not gotten any Versus releases in 2022. And I say that because Crossover 4 was supposed to come out in 2021, and because it's the type of set that it is, it doesn't really scratch the itch in the way that any of us really hardcore players would like. So here we are. We are about a month and 4 days, 5 days away from one whole year without versus cards, which makes this without a doubt the longest drought that we've had. Now, I don't want to be totally doom and gloom because it's also just true that the community is in one of the healthiest places it's ever been. We had a great string of regionals this summer. Winter through across this year, we've had a great string of regionals. We've had a lot of community events popping off. We've done a lot of fun stuff. There's been cool chat about cards. There's been a little bit of whining about incursion, which I totally understand. So as always, there's been a lot to talk about and kind of a mixed bag in terms of good and bad. But the one thing that is not a mixed bag is the lack of cards. And while it's cool to see the community doing what it's doing and continuing on and having cool events and still finding ways to enjoy this game that we all love, and I want that to continue, I am starting to feel a little worried about how long it can continue if we don't start to see some cards. Now, I was starting to kind of feel a little bit of this during summer, and then Gen Con happened, and we found out about the boys, we found out about Mortal Kombat, and that was awesome and mind-blowing. And now here we've gone a couple more months. It's all of August, September, we're here at the end of October, and we don't have even news on the sets that should have been out in February. Well, should have been. That's not fair. I'm not upset at Upper Deck for not being able to keep like the general proposed distribution dates. Like, I get it. There was a lot of stuff going on, but here's my worries. Since we have reached a point where a lot of the goods to market issues, a lot of the shipping issues, the material shortages, a lot of these things have been resolved, yet we still don't have these cards. And given some of the specific things that Upper Deck employees have mentioned, like in the Discord or in some of the live streams they do, I think we have every reason to believe that what's holding these expansions up is not a manufacturing issue. It's some kind of illegal something or another. And what worries me is sometimes legal something or others just straight up don't ever get solved. And that's a very scary place. Like, right now, we're in a mode of delay. And let me be clear, I am not saying this in a chicken little way. And in fact, part of the reason I want to address these ideas head on is because I want to shut the door on the sky is falling part of the conversation. Because I don't think that's the case. But I do think some potential outcomes could be used to make a sky is falling argument, and I want to try to pull the legs out from underneath that argument before it's being made. So, I think there's a very real world where whatever the legal issues are get drug on so long or don't ever get resolved to the point where this suite of Disney Plus sets maybe just don't come out, or they don't come out for a long enough period of time where Upper Deck's having to put other sets out before them. So like maybe, just for an example, Mortal Kombat ends up getting released before WandaVision. And I absolutely think there's a contingent of people who would look at that and go, the sky is falling, the Marvel license is in jeopardy, and kind of overreact to it. And I don't think that's justified. I think whatever the legal issue is could be very much self-contained to these specific cards, and it could come down to something as simple as like a specific like actor or actress having a problem with how they're pictured on the cards or not having their contract details situated in such a way, and that could hold up the entire set. That has nothing to do with the overall health or longevity of Versus. I'm kind of overthinking all of this, but I'm trying to be really, really clear because I am not panicked. I'm not freaking out, but I am starting to feel a little worried. So here's another data point to kind of throw out on the table, throw into this stew that we're mixing. And that is people like new cards. Straight up people like new cards. Now during quarantine, when we saw the real kind of explosion of people like looking for a game that they could play at home, and we saw a lot of community growth, a lot of the conversation was about people finding the old cards. Well, those players, and while we still get new players all the time, and I think we're likely to see even more new players given the IPs that are being brought into the game, I at a certain point, people are going to have all the cards or all the cards that they want out of the existing stuff. And at that point, if new stuff isn't available, not everybody's going to be like a hardcore obsessive about this game. I keep playing versus even when there isn't new content, but I'm devoted. I'm devoted to this game in a way that is not typical. I think that's very fair to say. I think probably a lot of the most vocal members of the community are devoted to the game in a way that is not typical. So the people that are going to start falling away, the people that are going to start not paying attention or stop paying attention would be a better way to frame that sentence. But the people that we're going to be losing due to the lack of new shiny things to get excited about are probably going to be invisible. They're going to be silent as they go. And we're not necessarily going to see them as they drift away. It would be way different if somebody like one of the guys from Apex or Roland from Buckeye League said, this is going to be the last Thursday article I write. There's just not anything left for me to say about Versus. That would be massive. I don't think that's going to happen because there is still so much cool stuff going on within the cards we already have. The rate at which cards come out, and because of how formats work, there's always new things to discover based on the card pool that you're in, which is one of the things I love about this game so much. But I'm not trying, I'm not trying to talk about how awesome Versus. I'm trying to talk about things that I'm worried about in this show. So I worry that there could be maybe not a mass exodus, but like a trickle exodus of the less committed players, like the casual players. And those players are really important. Those are most of the players. So I worry if we start to lose those players, all of the cool things that have been happening that we built up and got into the game to the best place that it's ever been as a community in terms of a card pool. Like the last couple arcs have been total bangers that Super Awesome Games has given us. So there's all this good stuff. And then on top of that, the Gen Con energy with the boys and Mortal Kombat and wow, all of that is lightning in a bottle. But over time, this is going to dissipate. And the way it dissipates is the lack of new shiny stuff for us to be excited about. So I totally get Upper Deck sitting there and going maybe like, well, we have the next expansion ready to go after the Disney stuff. But if we put out next expansion, what is it, the Krakoa arc, I think? Yeah, if we put out the Krakoa arc before we do the MCU arc, oh, that's going to make people think the sky is falling. That's going to be a really bad sign. We don't want to do that. But if we just wait and wait forever, like we're almost out of 2022 for all of these 2022 sets to come out, and we don't even have a full list of all the stuff that we would have been able to expect. There should have been one whole nother arc here, as well as a November release to have a full 2022 year. So we're only looking at a partial list, and we've seen zero fulfillment on that. It's a tough spot. I'm sure there's people that get paid a lot more than me sitting at Upper Deck going, well, here's all of these data points. What's the least worst situation? Generally speaking, I think more information is better. I would rather have Upper Deck say, okay, we think we're going to hit this release date, and then have to go, oh, all right, we're sorry, folks. We thought we were going to get there, but we couldn't, and now we have to change it to this other release date. But I know for sure that there were people talking about how they hate that and they don't want that, and how it makes them feel like Upper Deck lied to them and Upper Deck pulled the rug out from underneath them. And when they're getting that kind of feedback, of course they're going to communicate with the community less, which I think is exactly the wrong way to go. I think if you can't give us cards, the thing that Upper Deck should be doing is giving us community engagement. I would like to see Upper Deck online tournaments. Now, I know there's issues if they have random people, maybe an invitational tournament where they get a few specific players that they can have sign a certain contract of like code of conduct or whatever it is. Or don't even play for prizes, so there's nothing on the line, but just using the community engagement tools that they have to engage the community and do more. Like, I get that what I'm saying is, hey, you've got this new stuff that you've been doing, but you should like do a whole bunch more of it too. And that's a little like looking the gift horse in the mouth. But what I'm saying is, before you were giving us cards, And then this community stuff, the streams and whatnot, were on top of that. Now we don't have the cards. So if we can't have the cards, can we have more community engagement from in whatever form that takes? A community tournament featuring the community tournaments that are already going on, bringing on players to imagine how cool a live stream would be if the person who won the last regional just knew that they were going to be on one of the subsequent Upper Deck Wednesday live streams to just talk about it with like Rich or Mark or whoever. Is it Richard? Richard. Shoot. Man, well, apologies if I got it wrong, dude. I'm sorry. uh, but imagine how cool that would be if there was a little more pomp and circumstance around the regionals, and the entity that has the most control over that is Upper Deck. So if they can't give us cards, give us something else. Give us a little bit more stuff to get excited about. The latest set of sleeves, while every time they put them out, they look great. Like at a certain point, like they're just sleeves, man. Like we gotta have a little more than that, I think. So I am starting to get worried when we cross the 1 year mark with no actual legit 2022 versus expansions. Yes, again, asterisk, we have the 2021 expansion that's sort of not a true versus expansion in terms of what we come to expect. When we cross that 1 year mark, that's not going to be a great goalpost. That's not going to feel good. And I am starting to worry if they can't give us something. I mean, even news, even if it just spoils more cards, just start showing us Mortal Kombat cards, start showing us boys cards, even if we're not going to get them for 6 months. In this drought, we need something. And I think the place where the filling of this, I'm mixing my metaphors here really poorly. The entity that has the most ability to fill this hole is absolutely Upper. Do a trivia stream. Bring up call people from the community to do a Jeopardy style trivia. I mean, or do it with the chat. Like, there's a million different ways. Like, how cool would it be if Danny and Ben were hosting and asking a bunch of questions of people like Rob Smallwood and Vern from Apex and Patrick Lenahan, and we have like these big names of like fun personalities from the community, and they get to engage with, I mean, even Mark, or I'm like I'm not trying to leave anybody out, whoever. All I'm saying is we're gonna need something, and if that something can't be cards, it can't just totally be on the community to carry the life of this game. Because if it is, I do worry. Like, I want to keep playing versus, and part of that is keeping the community healthy. I mean, the other part, a big part, is giving us new cards to buy. But if we can't have that, going forward, it does start to look a little worrisome. So I'm not being Chicken Little. I'm not saying the sky is falling, and I tried to go out of my way to kind of offer reasonable explanations for why we're in the situation that we are. But I also don't come on this show and lie about stuff. And it would be a lie for me to say things are the best they've ever been at this point. In the community, yeah, I think they are. I think in terms of community events, we've got more activity, we've got more people. It's going great. But in terms of the game itself, like the issuance of new cards is not the best it's ever been. It's actually, I think at this point, this is bigger than the legacy drought already, because that only went from August to May, I think. So yeah. So once we hit that 1 year mark, that is a dubious goalpost that I really hope the game doesn't pass. I hope I look foolish and Upper Deck comes out tomorrow and says WandaVision in stores Friday. Bam! What? That would feel great. So not the most upbeat of episodes. I generally try to keep a positive attitude and approach everything from a place of like lifting the game that I love up and not trying to tear it down. And I hope I was able to thread that needle today. But we can't close our eyes and pretend that the problems aren't the problems. Like, that doesn't solve anything. So I'm still excited about Versus. I'm gonna play in this. Oh man, I didn't even talk about this. So there's a multiverse invitational that is being put on by Osh over in the Thunder Pal server. I guess I'll talk about that on another show. But see what I mean? There's lots of good stuff in this game, and it would break my heart to see Upper Deck fumble all of the community energy and all of the community goodwill that they've built up over the last couple of years. And I guess I'll leave it there. All right, go win some games.